Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. In today's gripping episode of The Young and the Restless, we take you straight to the stunning coastal city of Nice, France, where emotions are running high and the stakes have never been more life or death. Nina Webster arrives in Nice after receiving a frantic call from the hospital. Her son, Chancellor, is in critical condition. What was supposed to be a routine mission abroad has now turned into a nightmare for the Chancellor family. After collapsing during an off-duty walk, Chance was rushed to a local hospital where French doctors determined he's suffering from acute liver failure. The shocking twist? A transplant is the only thing that can save him now. As Nina walks into the sterile hospital corridors, you can see the terror on her face, her maternal instincts kicking into overdrive, desperate for answers, desperate to protect her son. In a powerful scene that fans won't forget, the doctor breaks the devastating news: there's no time to waste, and Chance's only hope is a living donor. Nina is crushed but pulls herself together, knowing she must act fast. She immediately begins asking who could possibly step in to save Chance's life. Could she be a match herself? Would Abby fly in from Genoa City? Or is there another person, someone from Chance's complicated past, who might rise to the occasion? Meanwhile, back in Genoa City, whispers about Chance's condition are spreading fast. Abby is already packing her bags, torn between her duties as a mother and her fears for the man she still loves. Devin hears the news and wrestles with his own guilt, wondering if he still has a place in Chance's life. Nina, isolated in a foreign hospital, faces impossible choices and reaches out to familiar faces for support. This episode is a masterclass in emotional storytelling, a blend of raw performances, shocking medical twists, and familial devotion. The bond between mother and son takes center stage as Nina fights through language barriers, bureaucracy, and her own fears to get Chance the help he needs. And when the doctor reveals just how slim the odds are without a compatible donor, the sense of urgency becomes overwhelming. What happens next will change everything. Don't miss our full breakdown and emotional recap of this unforgettable episode. We'll walk you through Nina's arrival in Nice, the doctor's heartbreaking revelation, and the unfolding crisis that could unite, or divide, the Chancellor family. Could this medical emergency bring long-lost family members back into the picture? Is someone willing to sacrifice for Chance, even if it means putting their own life on the line? Watch now and join the conversation in the comments. Who do you think will step up as Chance's donor? And how will Nina handle the pressure of saving her only son? Nina stepped off the train in Nice, the Mediterranean sun warming her face as the scent of salt and blooming flowers filled the air. The journey had been long, her mind racing with worry the entire way, but now that she was here, a strange calm settled over her. The city was beautiful, vibrant with color and life, a stark contrast to the heaviness in her chest. She had come because of Chance, her Chance, the man who had once been her everything, the one she had walked away from years ago, thinking it was for the best. Now, fate had pulled her back into his orbit, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what lay ahead. The message had been brief, urgent: Chance is sick. He needs you. No explanation, no details, just those 4 words that had upended her life once again. She hadn't hesitated, hadn't allowed herself to second guess. She packed a bag, booked the first available flight, and now here she was, standing in the heart of Nice, wondering where to go next. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out, seeing an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. "Hello," she answered, her voice tight with anticipation. "Nina?" A woman's voice, soft but firm. "It's Dr. Laurent. I'm calling about Chance. He's at the hospital. Can you come?" The words sent a jolt through her. Hospital. It was worse than she'd imagined. Yes, of course. Where? The doctor gave her the address, and Nina hailed a taxi, her hands trembling as she climbed inside. The ride was a blur, the city passing by in streaks of blue and gold, her thoughts a tangled mess of fear and regret. She should have stayed in touch. She should have checked on him. She should have. The taxi stopped in front of a sleek, modern building, the sign above the entrance marking it as a private medical facility. Nina paid the driver and rushed inside, her heart pounding. The receptionist directed her to the third floor, and she took the stairs two at a time, her breath coming in short gasps. When she reached the designated floor, a woman in a white coat stood waiting near the elevators, her expression unreadable. "Nina?" the woman asked. Nina nodded. "Dr. Laurent?" "Yes. Thank you for coming so quickly." The doctor's eyes were kind but weary, the look of someone who had delivered too much bad news. "Let's talk in my office." Nina followed her down the hall, her stomach twisting with dread. The office was small but bright, the windows overlooking a courtyard filled with olive trees. Dr. Laurent gestured for her to sit, then took her own seat behind the desk. For a moment, she simply studied Nina, as if weighing how much to say. "How is he?" Nina finally asked, unable to bear the silence any longer. Dr. Laurent exhaled slowly. "Not well, I'm afraid. Chance has end-stage liver disease. His condition has deteriorated rapidly over the past few months." The words hit Nina like a physical blow. Liver disease? How? Chance had always been so healthy, so full of life. What caused this? There are several factors: genetics, lifestyle choices, some prior damage that went untreated. But the specifics aren't as important right now as the solution. The doctor leaned forward slightly. "Nina, Chance needs a liver transplant. Without one, he won't survive the year." Nina's breath caught in her throat. A transplant. That was serious, life-altering. Is there a donor list? How long would he have to wait? Dr. Laurent hesitated. The waiting list is long, and Chance's blood type is rare. The truth is, his best chance, possibly his only chance, is a living donor. Someone compatible who can give a portion of their liver. Nina's pulse roared in her ears. A living donor. That meant surgery, recovery, risk. But it also meant Chance could live. How do we find out if I'm compatible? The doctor's eyebrows lifted slightly, as if she hadn't expected Nina to offer so quickly. You're willing to be tested? Nina didn't hesitate. Yes. Dr. Laurent nodded, her expression softening. Good. We'll need to run some tests, blood work, imaging, a full health evaluation. But first, you should see him. He's been asking for you. Nina swallowed hard. She wasn't sure she was ready to face him, to see the man she had once loved lying frail and sick in a hospital bed. But she had come this far. She couldn't turn back now. Dr. Laurent led her down another hallway, stopping outside a door marked with Chance's name. I'll give you some time alone. Press the call button if you need anything. Nina took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The room was dim, the curtains partially drawn, the only light coming from a small lamp near the bed. And there he was, Chance, propped up on pillows, his face gaunt, his skin tinged with an unhealthy yellow hue. But his eyes, when they met hers, were the same as she remembered, deep, intense, full of unspoken emotion. Nina, he whispered, his voice rough. Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped closer. Hey, Chance. He tried to smile, but it was weak, strained. You came. Of course I came. She reached for his hand, shocked at how thin it felt in hers. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He sighed, his fingers tightening slightly around hers. Didn't want you to see me like this. Nina shook her head, tears spilling over. You idiot. You should have called me the second you knew something was wrong. Chance closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. When he opened them again, they were filled with regret. I'm sorry, Nina. For everything. She knew what he meant, the past, the fights, the way they had torn each other apart before she had walked away. None of that mattered now. All that mattered was saving him. We'll talk about that later, she said softly. Right now, I need you to focus on getting better. Dr. Laurent told me about the transplant. Chance's expression darkened. She shouldn't have dragged you into this. I'm already in it, Nina said firmly. I'm getting tested. If I'm a match, I'm doing this. He stared at her, disbelief and hope warring in his gaze. Nina, it's not that simple. It's major surgery. There are risks. I know. She squeezed his hand. But you're worth it. For the first time since she had entered the room, something like relief flickered across his face. He didn't argue, didn't try to push her away. Instead, he simply whispered, "Thank you." Nina stayed by his side for hours, talking softly, filling him in on the years they had spent apart, avoiding the painful memories, focusing instead on the hope of what could come next. By the time Dr. Laurent returned to discuss the testing process, Nina's resolve was unshakable. She would do whatever it took to save Chance, even if it meant facing her own fears, even if it meant reopening old wounds. Because some loves were worth fighting for. And Chance? He had always been hers. Nina arrived in Nice under a pale lavender sky that blurred seamlessly into the turquoise waters of the Mediterranean. The coastline shimmered with the late afternoon sun, but her heart was too heavy to admire it. The flight from Genoa City had been long and restless, punctuated by constant worry, as if the turbulence in the sky mirrored the chaos unraveling inside her. She hadn't even had time to pack properly, just tossed some essentials into a duffel bag and rushed to the airport the moment she got the call. The voicemail had been short, but it shattered her world in under 10 seconds. "Mom, it's about Chance. Call me back. It's serious." Now, walking briskly through the marble corridors of the Clinique de la Méditerranée, a private hospital nestled high in the hills overlooking the sea, Nina felt like she was in a dream, except it was the kind where you wake up gasping, hoping it's not real. Her heels clicked anxiously on the floor as she passed nurses and specialists, her mind racing with unanswered questions. Why Nice? Why so far from home? Why hadn't Chance told her earlier something was wrong? She finally reached the ICU floor, where a young nurse with a clipboard met her. "Mrs. Webster?" the woman asked in a soft French accent. Nina nodded. "Right this way, please. Dr. Clement will speak with you shortly." The room smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair, the kind that only hospitals know how to bottle. Nina's eyes found Chance through the glass window of his private room. He looked pale, fragile even, with dark circles under his eyes and a mess of wires and monitors encircling his bed like a technological web. Her baby. Her boy. No matter how grown he was, no matter that he'd served his country, taken bullets, or faced down threats most men never dream of, he was still her baby. She stepped in slowly, heart pounding. Chance opened his eyes and tried to smile, the corners of his mouth barely twitching. "Mom," he whispered, voice hoarse and dry. She rushed to him, held his hand, and tried not to cry. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here." For a few minutes, nothing needed to be said. She stroked his hand, brushing back the hair from his clammy forehead. Finally, he exhaled deeply. "They said you'd be here fast." Nina nodded, brushing away a tear. "Nothing could have kept me away." Moments later, a man in his early 40s entered the room, introducing himself as Dr. Jules Clement. His white coat was crisp, but his expression was heavy. "Mrs. Webster, can we step outside for a moment?" She glanced at Chance, who nodded, and followed the doctor into a consultation room. "Your son has been suffering from complications related to a liver condition that's worsened significantly over the past several weeks," he began, his tone clinical but not unkind. There were signs, but as is often the case with someone like your son, military background, high tolerance for discomfort, he dismissed them until it became impossible to ignore. Nina clenched her hands together, listening, trying to stay upright as the ground beneath her seemed to fall away. "He's in advanced liver failure now. The good news is that he's stable, for the moment, but this is temporary. We're past the point of waiting. A liver transplant is the only viable solution." Nina blinked at him, stunned. "A transplant?" Her voice cracked. "But, does he have a donor? Is he on a list?" Dr. Clement hesitated, then gently explained, due to the acute progression and his international status, the process of being placed on the national registry here in France is complex. There is some coordination with the US, but it takes time, a luxury your son doesn't have. Which is why we're looking into living donors. Immediate family members are the most viable option. Nina stared at him, the words echoing around her brain like a distant siren. "You mean me?" she finally asked. He nodded. "There's a possibility you could be a match. Your age doesn't disqualify you outright, though we'd need to run several tests. The left lobe of your liver could regenerate after the procedure. It's a major surgery, of course, with significant recovery time. But the success rate is favorable," and she raised her hand, cutting him off. "Do whatever it takes. If I can help my son, I'll do it. I don't care what it costs." Her voice, once shaken, now rang with a steely resolve. "Please. Just tell me what I have to do." As she signed forms and underwent a barrage of tests over the next several hours, Nina couldn't stop thinking about the months that had led up to this. She recalled the phone calls from Chance that felt rushed, distant, distracted. He always chalked it up to work or fatherhood or long hours on assignments, but now she knew. Now she could hear the strain in his voice, the way he swallowed pain and fear and didn't want to burden anyone. It was just like his father had done, held in every feeling until it threatened to consume him. And now here they were, on the other side of the world, facing a truth too dire to ignore. While the nurses drew her blood and administered scans, Nina thought about the early years, Chance's scraped knees, his army of toy soldiers, the time he brought home a stray dog and swore he'd found his sidekick. He'd always had this deep need to protect others, to put himself second, even as a child. And now, once again, he'd put everyone else first, by keeping this illness hidden until it nearly killed him. That night, Nina sat by his bed long after visiting hours had technically ended. The nurses let it slide. She watched him sleep, the monitors beeping rhythmically, his chest rising and falling in labored breaths. His body seemed so still, but inside, a storm was raging. She looked at his hands, strong, calloused, hands that had saved lives, held his son, maybe even pulled her from emotional ruin more than once. And now those same hands looked too still. She reached for one and held it tightly, whispering softly. "I'm going to get you through this, Chance. You're not going anywhere." She remembered how he used to call her Iron Mom when he was a teen, mostly to tease her, but with a secret reverence that always made her smile. She was going to live up to that name now. For him. The next morning brought results. She was a match. Dr. Clement delivered the news carefully, as if afraid the weight of it might knock her over. But she stood tall, nodding. "Let's do it." The surgical teams prepped both mother and son for the transplant, setting the operation for the following day. In those final hours before surgery, Nina had a quiet moment alone with Chance. He was lucid, barely, his voice scratchy but still filled with the same fire that made him who he was. "You don't have to do this," he whispered. "I'm not letting you." Nina leaned in, gently cupping his face. "You hush. You gave me life the day you were born. I'm just returning the favor." He closed his eyes, overwhelmed, and she kissed his forehead. "You're my miracle, Chance. And I'm not letting this world take you away from me." The next hours blurred into scrubs and antiseptics and heart-pounding tension as the surgical team got to work. Nina lay still as they wheeled her into the bright, sterile room, her mind flashing with memories, holding newborn Chance for the first time, cheering at his high school graduation, the day he shipped off for basic training, the first time he told her about Abby. She fought back tears, knowing she had no room for fear. She would wake up. She would recover. And so would he. Hours passed. The doctors moved with precise urgency, coordinating every incision, every stitch, like a ballet of medicine and hope. The liver segment was removed carefully and transplanted into Chance's waiting body. As the anesthesia wore off, Nina slowly returned to consciousness in the recovery room, pain curling around her middle like a slow burn. But she didn't care. She groaned only once, then turned her head to the nurse. "Is my son okay?" The nurse smiled softly. "He's doing well. Stable. The liver's functioning. You did it." Nina exhaled in a sob, her body aching, her heart soaring. In the days that followed, mother and son healed in tandem. Recovery was slow and brutal, but the worst was behind them. And in those quiet post-op hours, their bond deepened in ways neither had expected. There were fewer words and more glances, more silent acknowledgments of pain, sacrifice, and unconditional love. Chance couldn't stop thanking her, though she waved him off each time. "You're my son," she would say. There was no other choice. News eventually reached Genoa City, prompting an outpouring of support. Abby sent voice messages and warm video chats, too emotional to fly out immediately. Dominic sent a drawing with a big red heart and the words "For Daddy and Grandma Nina." The staff at the hospital began calling Nina La Mère Courage, Mother Courage, an honorary title she carried with grace. As the summer sun baked the shores of the French Riviera, Nina stood once more by the window of Chance's hospital room, watching the ocean glisten in the distance. He was sleeping, his complexion healthier now, a soft rhythm to his breath. The monitors were quieter. The fear had lifted, replaced by tentative hope. She realized, as the breeze fluttered the curtains, that this ordeal had changed her, not just physically but emotionally. It had reawakened something fierce in her spirit, something resolute and unbreakable. Maybe that was the true legacy she would pass on to Chance, not just her liver, not just her biology, but her will to fight, her refusal to back down when love demanded more than what seemed possible. She pressed her hand to the glass and whispered, "We made it." And in that sacred silence between heartbreak and healing, Nina finally allowed herself to breathe.